I'm seeing more and more people, more and more property management companies look towards virtual assistants since the pandemic happened. And now we have this, this huge increase in inflation. More and more people in America need more money than ever before. And there's just not a lot of high level jobs in property management firms. Matter of fact, there's a lot of low level, low enjoyment jobs that just can't afford to pay the what people need these days.
Welcome to the Property Management Brainstorm Show with Bob Preston. Bob is the lead consultant and podcast host at Property Management Brainstorm, the consulting and strategic planning company dedicated to the property management industry. This podcast is for property managers and company owners seeking an in-depth look into current trends toward adding doors, growing recurring revenue, and building a high-profit property management business. You'll hear from leading professionals on hot topics, success stories, and strategies for expanding your company and assuring your property portfolios are managed efficiently. Now, here is your host, Bob Preston.
Hello, Brainstormers. This is Bob Preston, your host, broadcasting from our Property Management Brainstorm studio in Del Mar, California. If you're new here, please subscribe so you get ongoing access to all of our episodes. And if you like what you hear, we would love to get a positive review. So before I dive in today, I would like to give a shout out to our amazing sponsors for helping to support the show: Z Inspector, SureVestor, APM Help, VPM Solutions, RentScale, Second Nature, Blanket, and finally, today's feature sponsor, Shodigs, who you will hear about more in a brief mid-roll about halfway through the episode. As a percentage of total expense for a typical property management company, the staffing line can vary depending upon various factors too within your business, including the company size, perhaps range of services, location, and overall business model. However, a general guideline that we see according to the benchmarks that are published by NARPM, staffing expenses typically represent 40 to about 60% of a property management company's overall expense. In a typical property management company, staffing represents the most significant expense line on the P&L and can be the difference between being profitable or losing money. Therefore, your property management team must be fine-tuned and set up as efficiently as possible to optimize staffing for success. My guest on the show today is Pete Neubig, CEO at VPM Solutions, an online platform built specifically for the property management industry, providing access to over thousands of candidates from 100 countries specific to the housing industry. Pete and I will dive in on what it takes to optimize property management teams for success. It's going to be a great episode. Must listen. So here you go. Pete, welcome to Property Management Brainstorm.
Bob, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for you. This is going to be a great new adventure for you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to have you back on the show. I mean, you and I know each other well, but I still like to always start the show by asking my guests to introduce themselves. Tell us a bit about your background. I know it's extensive in your case, so keep it short, right?
I'll keep it short.
Yeah, but you can also tell us a bit about VPM Solutions. And so how about that as we kick things off?
Sure. Well, I was a property manager like you. I sold my business in 2019. We had 980 properties when we sold. Took a job with Mind purchased us, and I was there for about 18 months. And within those 18 months, I realized that I am unemployable. And so I started my new business called VPM Solutions, which is a platform that connects a property management industry with remote team members in over 100 countries.
Wow, that's interesting because that's kind of my parallel. You and I parallel that. I mean, I stayed after
we were both RVPs together too at NARPM.
That's right. And stayed with Pure for about 18 months. And wasn't necessarily that I was unemployable. I mean, I know what you mean by that. You know, you want to be an entrepreneur, right? So you want to, I think, work at the corporate level. For me, it was just, it got to the point where I felt like, you know, I was just kind of taking marching orders instead of, you know, really, really creating something of my own. So that was when that's kind of what hit it for me, right?
We could do a whole show on people who sold their businesses and their experiences afterwards, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So as I mentioned, this is your second time on the show. The first was when you were just starting VPM Solutions. I think it was maybe 3 years ago. I can't remember. So, all right, since you were last on the show, 3 years since, whatever, what are some of the staffing trends and changes you're seeing in the property management industry?
I'm seeing more and more people, more and more property management companies look towards virtual assistants since the pandemic happened. And now we have this, this huge increase in inflation. More and more people in America need more money than ever before. And there's just not a lot of high level jobs in property management firms. Matter of fact, there's a lot of low level, low enjoyment jobs that just can't afford to pay what people need these days. So more and more people are learning about virtual assistants and are acting on it and moving more of those low level, low enjoyment jobs over to overseas.
Well, it's interesting because I think you mentioned since the pandemic, too, companies have realized, hey, I don't really need a physical office. So if people are going to be remote anyway, they're not necessarily restricted to hiring people in their locale. They can pretty much go anywhere.
Yeah, I read an article and it said if you're a US based worker that is working 100% remotely, your job will be outsourced in the next 10 years.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of people that are, that are they don't want to go back to the office, right? You've seen this a lot in Northern California. The tech companies, they're making their people come back to the office, and they're very resistant to it. But at the end of the day, that's the trend that's happening is more people are coming back to the office. And I think they want, because they have this big office space and they couldn't get out of the lease. For me at Empire, I got rid of my office. I didn't want people coming back. And then we're at mine, the same concept.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I suppose if you do go back to work in the physical offices, to your point, that could be a little bit of job security if you're holding down a desk.
100%. So the companies in Northern California, the tech companies want it mainly because they're seeing that now that people are working outside the office, there's not a lot of that creativity that's happening.
Yeah.
Right. With property management, we don't need creativity. I hate to say it, right? We need tasks done. And if we do our jobs correctly, if we create the structure of the organizational correctly, then 80% of those tasks are done all the time. And then you have the humanization of 20% that get escalated to your top team.
Sure.
So so the challenges that the tech companies are having that they need to bring people back in the office don't apply to our industry, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Okay. So I speak to a lot of property management companies, as I'm sure you do too. And I know some of the questions I get are there's so many different strategies about how you structure your team here. Right. And now I'm not talking about necessarily remote versus in-house at this point, but just the structure, how the team is organized and each type of approach has its own pros and cons. So there's portfolio models, right? There's departmental functional teams and there's hybrid. From your perspective and what you see kind of in, I guess, working with companies out there on their staffing efficiency, what's the most efficient model for optimizing staffing in your mind?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the old, it depends answer.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
That's right.
One of the things that when you go to if you've ever been to a NARPM conference or a product manager conference, we always ask like, how many doors do you manage? And everybody's like, oh, that doesn't make any sense because it doesn't really matter because it's about the revenue, the profit.
I used to hate that question, Pete. I mean, same exact reason.
But operationally, Bob, it matters. Operationally, I can't, if I'm running 980 units and you're running 50, my org chart is going to be completely different than your org chart.
That's true.
And so, and the systems that I have are completely different. So I'll give you the answer. I'll give you the answer that I believe. I believe when you first start off, your portfolio, you're basically portfolio based, right? You're doing everything yourself up to say 50 units, right? And so you're a property manager, but you're also a leasing agent. You're wearing every hat known to man, right? Your org chart literally has one box with every functionality in property management. And then when you hit about 50 units, you're like, holy crap, I can't grow anymore. I'm underwater. I'm working late. I'm not making as much money as when I quit my job. So I need help. And that's where you go into hybrid. And then you just take a couple of hats and you split off like an amoeba and you say, okay, here. And this is where I believe a virtual assistant is really helpful because if you hire somebody in the US, the salary requirements are really high. So you can have somebody and you can say, all right, I don't like these three things. These functions, I really don't like them. So I'm going to go ahead and create a job description for these three things. And now I'm hybrid. Well, now when you get to, let's say 200 units, and now in between that 50 and 200, you're still hybrid, but you just keep splitting off some of those hats, so to speak. And now instead of one assistant, maybe you have four, right? Or five even. Well, at some point, and it's around the 300 door mark is what I found, is you have to move from hybrid to departmental.
Yes.
And so now you have people that are responsible for specific parts of the business. Right. So you have your maintenance team, your turn coordinator, your leasing team, your resident services team, your whatever that is, right? And then what I found is I got to about 980,000 doors. Departmental worked fine for us. But when I went to Mind, and I think you'll see this at Pure or Evernest or bigger companies, they tend to go to the pod structure is kind of after departmental.
I was going to ask about that, the pod structure. Yeah.
Yep. And so now one of to bring the virtual assistants back in, like when I ran the departments, my virtual assistant team actually ran each department. So I didn't have somebody in the US. I actually had a virtual assistant as a supervisor on other VAs to run those departments. And I think one of the mistakes that people make is like, well, I only want to give them a checklist and they only do that checklist. They actually can do a lot more. They can be an integral part of your organization. But if you don't have the right org chart, then chaos ensues is what I found.
Sure. And let's be clear. I mean, at a Mind or an Evernest or Pure, I mean, I don't know much about the other companies, but I think the pod structure works. And if we could talk about that just for a few seconds to let people know what that is. It's basically like there are models of staffing based on probably how many doors are in that particular branch office, right? And the reason that works at a larger corporate entity like a Mind or something is that some of the functions get picked up at the corporate level. For example, accounting, right?
Yep.
So you're centralizing some of the expenses that the branch office isn't paying for anymore. Is that how you see it?
I do. I don't know if anybody actually has cracked the code on, being able to manage 50 or 100,000 units across the country just yet.
Nope.
But pod structure seems to be one of the ways people are trying to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So another aspect having a big impact on the industry right now in many ways is prop tech. All right. Everyone has their own tech stack. So what tech solutions do you think offer the most bang for the buck in terms of optimizing staffing?
Well, I think it just depends on your personality type. And I am a huge nerd. I'm a C in a disc profile, so I'm very detail oriented, and I'm an operations guy. So if you ask this to my old business partner, he would probably tell you something about like a CRM system.
Sure.
For me, I'm going to go the other way. I think Lead Simple is really changing the game, and I'll give him a shout out to Jordan and Zach Bercampus and the team out there. They're doing an incredible job. Before Lead Simple came out, Bob, I don't know if you knew this, but I used HubSpot in a way that Lead Simple operates today. And so what Lead Simple is, it's just an automation tool that allows you to basically take your process, input it into a software called Lead Simple, and it will spit out tasks and emails and automate a lot of these tasks that we forget to do. And so I'm a big fan of if you have your correct process down. Now, if you put garbage in, you get garbage out on any software.
Right.
And so you have to get your process documented, dialed out, and only then do you put it in Lead Simple. And then over time, you turn on the automation inside of Lead Simple. So even though it's in Lead Simple, you still run it manually for maybe a month, and then you start automating stuff. And to me, that there are only two ways. Well, I guess three. Now that you don't have to have an office, that's one way to reduce your costs. But the other way to become super efficient and is the best bang for the buck for your profitability is a combination of virtual assistants with automation.
Sure.
And so I'm a big fan of those guys at Lead Simple. And if you don't have a regular property management software, like that's obviously, if you're still operating off of a spreadsheet, you're in trouble. Like obviously that's the easy answer.
Yeah, of course. And there's even automation popping up now and some of those, solutions, building them, Appfolium and things like that. So, all right. Okay, so it's more of the concept of automation and then selecting the right tools to help you get there. I think that's the point that you're trying to make here. Is that really helps you maximize your efficiency and optimize your staffing, hopefully to keep the staffing levels at the optimum level to kind of support the business with the automation.
Yeah, the more automation you have, the more doors per person you can manage.
Are you tired of wasting hours stuck in traffic running between your properties? Well, do we have a solution for you? Showdigs is more than just an all-in-one leasing software. They employ over 2,000 licensed real estate agents, especially trained to show your properties on demand. Here's how it works. You list your properties through Showdigs, and when a lead inquires to tour, Showdigs automation allows them to self-schedule a time that works for them. A local Showdigs agent will accept the tour requests through the Showdigs app, and once they've shown the property, you'll receive a detailed tour report straight to your inbox. Do you want to learn how Showdigs can save you time and money without compromising your conversion rates? Head over to showdigs.com/PMB to learn more about the all-in-one leasing software that can handle all of your field work. Fill out the form, and when you sign up for Showdigs, you'll get to activate your first 5 properties for free. Once again, that's showdigs.com/PMB. This is probably a good point in our conversation here. I think we're going to get to that anyway. It's kind of segue into the topic of hiring in-house versus hiring remotely, right? You have kind of 2 options. And you and I were chatting before the episode started. I mean, a lot of companies after the pandemic don't even have offices anymore, right? So everybody's remote. But I see this as one of the most critical choices any owner or operations manager has in the property management company is kind of where you're going to allow people to work, and are you going to be hiring people based on their talent and instead of where they're located, right? So what are the ins and outs from your perspective and decision factors for each approach, in-house versus remote?
Yeah. So yeah, you're talking to a guy who literally created a VA company. So
I know. Yeah.
But when I ran Empire Industries, the property management firm, I had about 34 people working for me. 23 were in Mexico or virtual assistants,
Wow.
and then the other 11, or I think it was 11, were in the States. So I can tell you what I did and what I believe. I believe anything that is task-based can be a virtual assistant.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that anything that requires a license or to be physically at a property or physically somewhere has to be a US-based person.
Sure.
All right. So now there's that middle, like, okay, Pete, what about supervisors, middle management, things of that nature? All right. And over time, I used to think that had to be US, but over time, I've actually moved over into that can be a virtual team. I believe even now your CFO could be somebody virtual.
Mm-hmm.
If they have a doctorate degree but they live in Mexico, I mean, they can still be your CFO. So if it were me, I would probably have like a 2/3, 1/3 of people that are remote versus people that are in my office. I still like I like my property managers to be licensed, and I like them to be able to take the escalations.
Sure.
As a matter of fact, Bob, I actually changed the property manager. I removed that title from our company, and I call them asset managers.
I remember talking about this before with you. Yeah.
Yeah, because property managers are like gophers, like, hey, go for this, go for that. Mm-hmm. And so I'd rather them be asset managers, and I want them to talk about higher level things, not like, oh, we didn't send the 3-day notice. Like that's your team in virtual assistant team that just handles those tasks. I'm going to talk to you about your portfolio. I'm going to talk to you about like what the market conditions are, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So
what the value is of your property, how much rent we can get, and things like that. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I suppose to your point, there are certain tasks within the industry and at the property manager level that, I mean, occasionally you do have to get up, get in the car and go to a property.
It does happen from time to time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Well, being from Southern California, the cost of living here is really expensive, right? So when I look at national staffing benchmarks that, for example, the 2022 benchmarks that came out from NARPM, hiring remote talent can really be a massive equalizer when I'm comparing what our metrics were compared to kind of national averages, right? So, I guess what I'm talking about is if I were to hire every employee locally in San Diego as a W-2 employee, if I'm hiring people remotely, that's a real big equalizer. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Actually, what I found when I was hiring, this is now a few years back, this is probably in 2017, 2018 timeframe, I found that I can hire people, about 2.5 people remotely for each one person in the United States.
The VAs we're talking about, they're hired as contractors, right? So you're not
That's correct.
pay employment taxes. You're not paying benefits, right? Those
That's right.
add expenses to that line as well.
That's correct. And they're responsible for their own taxes because they are not they're foreign nationals, so they handle their own taxes. And if you do what's called a direct hire, then you pay more per hour. They get paid more per hour than if they were going through a placement service firm. And I know we'll talk about that later, but they are making some of the people in the US have this hard time. Like, I can't just pay somebody $7 an hour. And what I'm telling you is that $7 an hour equates to like a $50,000 a year salary here in the United States.
That's right.
And so, you have to get over that because you understand the cost of living. And that's the point I was trying to make: Southern California versus Houston versus Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've touched on this a little bit already, but let's name names, so to speak. I mean, what are the typical jobs within a property management company that are most suitable for a VA versus, kind of a direct employee hire?
Yeah, I'll go back to my old mantra: anything that does not need to be physically at the property. So what does that mean? Well, I can tell you the number one job that's posted on our platform is maintenance coordinator.
Yeah.
So that's the first one that people are trying to move out. Obviously, it's a big challenge. The challenge with that job being the first one is, and you know this, Bob, the maintenance coordinator role has a lot of decision points, and the more decision points that you have in any role, the longer it takes for training.
Sure.
And so I'm a big believer that, I can tell you, it took me 90 days to train my team from maintenance. After 90 days, they got it, and they were great at it. But it was 90 days of like every day of me training them for an hour to 2 hours a day. Other positions like lease renewal coordinator or listing coordinator or lease marketing coordinator or property accounting, all those have less decision points. And so on average, I can go ahead and train them up in about 2 to maybe 3 weeks at the most. And so as you go through each process in your organization, ask yourself, does this person need to be in the office? Right? Like at Empire, we were very aggressive with virtual assistants, meaning that we had them do lots of jobs that other people wouldn't do. For example, when you called my office, Bob, if you wanted to work with us as you're a potential client, you actually talked to a virtual assistant. They were our inside sales reps. Sure. They actually asked all the questions, and then they scheduled you with somebody in the US in sales. Right? All the onboarding, when you bring somebody on, like, do you really need your property manager, who's supposed to be your highest and best used team member, to actually enter property information and enter leasing information and enter resident information into the system? No, give that to a team member.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No doubt about it.
Utility turn on, turn offs is a huge time waster.
Yeah.
Right? So why am I paying somebody $50 an hour to do that when I can pay somebody $5?
That's right. It's interesting because a maintenance coordinator, we called it a maintenance facilitator, same concept, was our first VA hire, right? And it worked really, really well. You still might need someone to occasionally go on site and take a look at a job or assess if the job was completed correctly, but that can be done, after the fact. I mean, I think a maintenance facilitator, you're more or less being a matchmaker. You're getting, the right maintenance vendor dispatched to the property and kind of matchmaking that with the tenant. And that doesn't require a skilled property manager, right? Or licensed property manager.
Yep. I'm a big believer. You do need field techs. I don't know if there's another word for them, but we call them field technicians. They would go in, do the pre-move-in reporting, the post-move-in reporting, get the property, And so my property manager is in Houston, because Houston is a very big city. Yeah. You can drive an hour and still be in Houston.
So San Diego. Yeah. San Diego's like
so.
That.
My team, I knew that if my property manager had to get up off their chair and get in a car and drive, I lost a day of work. By the time they get there, look at something and drive back.
The windshield time, man. You got to cut that down, right?
Got to cut that down. Yeah. So we had field techs that did that. So they report back to the manager, and only if it was really, really high escalation would the manager leave the chair and go to a property, check it out.
Well, and I think you're a good person to answer this question. Okay, so that's a maintenance facilitator, but if you get into, turning over accounting or bookkeeping or something like that, I'm assuming they're trained people who know the basics of bookkeeping and accounting that are available still virtual, right?
Correct. 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Accounting, marketing, like all the basic stuff, like people know that. It's the stuff that's really intricate to our industry that it's harder to find people that have experience in that. So you have to hire on attitude and on personality, is my opinion for those type of roles.
Right. Yeah. And I suppose in some cases, differences might exist between states and legal stuff when it comes to leasing and stuff like that. But that's what your licensed property managers are for. Okay, so when you're searching for a virtual assistant and identifying candidates to hire, what makes VPM Solutions different from other companies that are out there and offering VA talent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's two ways to find talent. One is you can go to a placement service company and they'll find you talent. And one is to go to a platform like ours and find talent. So let's talk a little bit about the differences. With a placement service company, you're going to get charged upfront money, upfront fee. I've heard anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000. But the positive is they will take your money and they'll say, all right, Bob, we'll be back in a few weeks and we're going to go find some candidates for you. And we're going to do the pre-interviews and we're going to let you interview the final 3 candidates. So there's not a lot of time that it takes for you, right? And then if you like the candidates, you take one and you move on. That candidate works for that company. And then they set the market rate and say, okay, Bob, here's how much we're going to charge you. Don't worry about what the VA makes. They'll get paid accordingly. And then the other positive to that is Bob says, you know what? I don't like the guy we hired, Pete. And then, the company would then say, okay, we'll give him a performance evaluation. We'll replace him with somebody else. So the management side is gone. And of course, the upfront of finding the right person is gone. So there's a lot less time, but you're paying for that in money.
Paying for it. That's a good point. Yeah.
Now with a direct hire, what happens is what that means is that they directly get hired by you as a contractor. Mm-hmm. So the positive of this approach is there's no money up front. With VPM, there's no fees for the company at all.
So on your platform, you're hiring them directly. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And there's no fees for the company to post a job. There's no monthly fees, setup fees, anything like that. But so the positive of that is there's no fees. The other positive, they work directly for you. So when you want to implement your culture and your core values on these folks, you can do that. When they work for another company, they're imprinting their core values on them as well. So there's he who has 2 masters has none, so to speak, because they have 2 bosses. They have you and they have the company they work for.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you're getting charged more money. They're getting paid less. With a direct hire, you pay less money and they make more money, because with our solution, the way we make money is we charge the VA 10%. So they're only paying 10% of their salary, versus with a placement service company, it might be a lot more, up to 30, 40, maybe even 50%.
I'd say it's probably about a third, right? I think in most cases.
Yeah, I think it's up to more than that sometimes.
Yeah.
And so by taking the middleman out, you have less churn with the team because they're getting paid better, so they're happier and they want to stick around. And because you have your core values that get pushed down, your culture, they tip you hiring the right person in the right seat, so your churn rate goes down. With our company, we offer what's called a white glove service. So we'll walk you through the whole process. The only thing we don't do is we don't interview right now. We'll do everything else for you, but it's your job to do the final interviews.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're a direct hire and you know that you're working for that employer, that makes a big difference just in the way they feel about themselves and culturally, fitting within and being a part of an organization versus sort of almost being on loan almost when you're going through a different company.
Correct. Yeah. And I'll say the last piece of it is we have we call the VPM Academy. We didn't have this when I spoke to you a couple of years ago.
That's right. Yeah.
The VPM Academy is I think we have 28 courses on the platform now, and most of them are written for people who are looking to get into the industry. They can take a course. For example, we just in October of 2023, we just launched the Maintenance Coordination 101 course. And so you can take that course. All the courses are around 45 to 50 minutes long. And you can take that course and you have to test out. And when you test out and pass the test, you get a certification on the platform. And so you as a company, you can say, I need somebody who has, who knows maintenance coordination. Well, you can at least search by the certification, say, oh, this person took this course and they passed it. So obviously that person's interested in maintenance and they have the capacity to learn and retain knowledge.
Okay, one of the advantages I think too with your platform, and you didn't explicitly touch on it, is that you get to look at more candidates, right? I mean, so does the hiring company do that, or do you help them with that process?
Yeah, so the hiring company does that. We have 32,000 on the platform now. I think 31,972 last time I checked.
Wow.
And so the platform is built as a DIY. So you can search and you can review resume cards. You can invite them to a job. When you post a job, you get matched with people who are best candidates for your job. And then of course they can apply. Anybody can apply to your job. And if you're like overwhelmed, 30,000 is a lot of people. We get that. You can use the white glove service, which again is the free service where we basically walk you through the platform step by step and give you all of the little nuances that we learned, like what red tape should you, like what questions should you ask before you interview people? What should you, hey, should you ask for a video? Should you have a test? Things of that nature. So we've kind of figured some of that stuff out.
That's awesome. Okay. And how are those people finding you, the people that are the talent, the people that are on, the 32,000 people that are on your platform? How do they find VPM Solutions?
Yeah, we're doing a great job of marketing inside different countries. We have an affiliate program, so it's spreading like wildfire where they will get their friends, family to create a profile. And if their friend and family gets a job, then we give them a portion of what we make. And so we have an affiliate program that does that.
Oh, wow. And it's like a referral program kind of thing.
Yep, it's a referral program. Correct. Yeah, we have it on both sides. We have it on the company side and on the virtual assistant side. But I just think, people in other countries, the virtual assistant thing's been around since 2000, and it's really caught on. So they're a little bit more mature in the idea of working remotely than the U.S. is right now. The U.S., they really came in vogue in 2020 when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't have any when I first started my business, and then, saw the light probably, it was more like probably 2017, in that time frame. So yeah,
we were early. I think you and I were early adopters on it. Since 2020, though, it's really a lot more people are moving over to VA side.
Oh, no doubt about it. Okay, so if I'm listening today and I'm interested in becoming a client for VPM Solutions, what's the process for finding and hiring a VA from there? Like, hey, I'm interested. I want to try it. What do they do?
Yeah, easy. Just go to vpmsolutions with an s.com, vpmsolutions.com, create a free profile, and you're there. The profile takes 3 steps, and you're there, and you can literally browse the 32,000 profiles and resume cards, and that's it. It's easy. It's that easy. If you want to reach out to me directly and schedule some time or a demo, it's pete@vpmsolutions.com, and just feel free to email me. And I love talking like this, Bob. I love talking business. I love talking property management and virtual assistants. So sometimes it's tough to shut me up.
Oh man, no, it's cool. You're a passionate guy and you know your stuff, and it's always great to chat about this kind of stuff. And the platform from an employer perspective is free, right? It's not like Indeed or some other platform where you have to pay $800 just to put a job up, right?
Nope, it's all free.
From your perspective, it's free. Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. Hey, I always love talking to you. This has been a good conversation, but in the interest of time, we got to wrap up here. So what other closing thoughts do you have that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, I would just say, like, if you're a little nervous and on the fence about a remote team member, don't be. Just give it a shot. Try them with one small job inside the organization. And then the other thing is, whenever you're going to hire somebody, whether it's remote or not, make sure that you have the clear job description so you and they know what that looks like. If you can, have key performance indicators, so it's the report card, so you know that they're doing a good job. So there's some prerequisites before you hire folks. And those are the 2 things. And make sure you have core values, so you know the type of person you want. So core values, job description, KPIs. If you don't have that, you can still hire people, but the success rate goes down.
Sure.
So just have all that information. So this way, you know exactly what you're looking for. Success rate goes up.
And don't you help companies with that? Don't you have some job descriptions and such on your website?
I do. I have over 50 of them with a recommended disc profile and recommended KPIs.
Wow. Okay. So that's another benefit of the platform. That's kind of the value add, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, we already talked about how to reach out to Pete. Obviously, his link will be in our episode notes. And if anybody wants help with getting connected, I can do that too. So, hey, Pete, thanks so much for being on the show today. I hope to see you soon. And it's always great to chat. And hopefully you'll be a broker owner or we'll see each other face to face sometime in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see you there. Thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, Pete. Hey, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being on the show. As we wrap up today, I'd like to make a quick plug to our listeners to click on the subscribe button, give us a like, and if you would, please pay it forward with a positive review. Thank you for tuning in to Property Management Brainstorm, where we are always working hard to find new ways to advance the property management industry, and we will catch you next time.